Hi everyone, me again Uli. This is the 8th installment of a little video series I have had some time to do in order to support my book Thoughts on the Vastness of Karma. So in connection with talking about karma, there are lots and lots of subjects that karma obviously applies to in our lives, and in this little episode I wanted to talk about the subject of seeds. I have a garden I'm lucky enough to be able to use, and a little greenhouse, and the other day I was harvesting kale seeds, and as benign and as it sounds, it became a very profound experience for me, and I wanted to briefly use that as an introduction as to why that has relevance to the subject of karma and ourselves. Because not everyone has the opportunity to have a garden or be able to grow things from seed. I will give a little bit of background into that. A couple of years ago I joined and co-formed a little organic growing group in our area, where a few people in the community got together and started to grow organic food for ourselves, and as a result of that I started to grow organic food in my garden as well, in a lovely greenhouse which was set up with the fantastic help of some wonderful people that I know, and I'm still eternally grateful for, because this little greenhouse that's been there for 3 or 4 years now has been constantly giving beautiful sort of greens mostly. It decides itself what it wants to grow. Whatever I put in there doesn't always work. But the amazing thing is I planted some organic kale seeds there a couple of years ago. And I love kale, and of course kale is one of those green vegetables that everybody should know about, how powerful it is as a healing tool in terms of sorting out our gut and our stomachs and our well-being and so on. In addition to that, I've been growing other things as well, and one of the other greens that's done very well in the greenhouse is spinach. These organic seeds come from Tama Organics, or Tama Organics, and the organic soil came from a local supplier, and I felt very strongly about making it all organic, because in this day and age we don't always know where our food comes from, certainly not from the supermarket. Even if it is organic, it has different laws attached to it and rules and governmental regulations, which don't always mean that it suits a particularly vegan diet as well, if substances are used in order to not allow bugs to attack crops and harvest. So to be able to sort of watch our own food grow in the greenhouse has been fantastic. This spring the kale shot into seed, basically flowered into beautiful yellow flowers which scented the whole greenhouse in the early spring, which was so delightful that I didn't want to remove the flowers. In fact, we had them in salads and so on. It was really lovely to sort of taste the blossoms, which taste really full of honey and so on. So they were so good as a springtime elixir and a boost to our immune systems, which was very important this year. And I thought once the flowers had gone into seed, I would leave them long enough for them to dry out. So I basically cut the sprouts off, the tops off, and thought, okay, we'll just wait until we can harvest the seeds until they're dried out, and the kale plants will probably not regenerate. Well, they did, and that's amazing really, because nature is our greatest teacher sometimes, isn't it? I didn't know that if I lopped off the tops of the kale plants, that it would actually just grow Cavallonera again, and beautiful wide leaf green kale leaves very, very quickly. So we were able to not only harvest the seeds and spread the organic seeds amongst the community again in little pouches which are prepared so that everybody can benefit. We also could carry on without having to replant the kale and wait for the next winter. carry on harvesting the kale, which we're juicing and sharing again with as many people as we can. And I was doing this, and then this little kind of thing appeared on the internet, which has become a big thing, that people were being sent seeds from, you know, possibly China. Don't know whether that's been confirmed yet, but people were being sent seeds, and suddenly everybody had to be suspicious about seeds, and so would I be, because seeds can be manipulated and we don't always know where our seeds come from. And certainly I wouldn't trust any seeds that come from an unknown source. We all know that certain companies have genetically manipulated seeds in order to sort of sometimes completely destroy crops in places like you know, India and so on, and parts of China itself where crops were grown, South America too, where crops were grown and they had to be completely rebought the next season, and that people were forced into rebuying the whole crops when really they could ill afford to do so, which put their livelihood at great danger and their lives at risk. And this is where I felt it was a really good subject to talk about, not only seeds in terms of what that means for us personally, but also in nature, which we're very, very closely related to. So the seeds that we've grown are now passed on to others so that they can be resown and other people can benefit. And it's been such a fascinating thing to look at all the dried seeds, that one seed pod, and there's thousands of them, one seed pod would contain at least 5 or 10 tiny little brown seeds from the kale plant, and each tiny little seed, only a millimetre wide, would regrow a whole plant with more, you know, sort of not just food for a couple of years or however long the plant would grow and be watered and nurtured, but also produce more seeds, thousands more seeds onwards. And this is where I'm probably stating the obvious, and at the danger of stating the obvious, that most of us who spend a little bit of time in the garden growing things and are already aware of this, are probably laughing, saying, well, you're not telling us anything new. But what about the next generation? What about the new generations that are growing up with this fear of what seeds could actually mean, how positive seeds are and how wonderful they are and how important they are, but are growing up with this fear of wondering where seed comes from if it's being posted to people into the letterbox. And I would certainly, you know, say to people, don't just throw it in the bin, because if these seeds have been manipulated, they may well take over other indigenous crops. I would literally incinerate them. I wouldn't just grow them in the bin or in the compost, because they might sprout again and they might not be the right seeds for our particular area. For like I said, you know, it might not be good to have them generate crops, even if they might be okay in themselves. There's no note to say, here's some lovely organic seeds, make the most of it. There's no lovely, caring, wonderful note that came with them. They just came in the post, unasked for and randomly by strangers, so I wouldn't trust them at all. But I know that I can trust my own seeds that we've grown in our own greenhouse. So it's so important to go back to that simplicity, I feel, to understand and to really, really get into that feeling again of understanding what nature already provides for us, and to regenerate that knowledge and not allow that knowledge to dissipate, because the next generation, for example my daughters and my grandchild, are growing up knowing that from a tiny, tiny little seed a plant will sprout that will then generously give forevermore. And some plants will do that, and some plants will just give continuously for generations to come. And some of those heirloom seeds that are freely available if you look for them on the internet locally in your own country and are indigenous to your area, those are the ones that we look into and should promote and generate ourselves. So we've not just created good food for ourselves, we've created a whole idea of positivity again, and an idea that seeds aren't something to necessarily be scared of, but also something that we have to value and have to learn to value again, and spend more time generating, because this is where potentially our future food will come from if more food is going to be compromised like it has been as of late. Which brings me on to really the next 10 minutes or so that I want to speak about what other meanings there are of seeds. And I've spoken previously about what the seed of the self is within us that incarnates. The power that one little seed had of the kale seed that I saw just lying there, and it had so much energy and it had so much potential that I understood and that I actually saw and took time to sort of really truly understand and comprehend. And it sounds a bit hippie-ish again, you know, but that's me, I'm a little bit of a hippie. But it does also represent everything that we are too. We have got this potential within us, we have this potential to grow, and this is our inherent future, this is our inherent knowledge, it's all there. And it incarnates into a physical existence in ourselves. So if we pay attention to, in our meditation time, in the time that we sit still, of truly grasping the concept of our aliveness, of the aliveness of this tiny, tiny little seed. And a kale seed is vast in size compared to the seed that is within us. Our seed is sort of like an imploded vault of potential when it incarnates. It has to be an utterly condensed form of energy that can then burst forth once it becomes physically manifest. And because we spend so much time in physical existence only, we only pay attention to what we can see or perceive with our own eyes or with our five senses and so on. We look at something and we don't always fully grasp what that is. We might see seed as a speck of dust. We might not see that it's able to carry DNA. It's able to carry the future potential of a whole living being in there. And if we don't see that in a plant and don't truly understand what that potential is and how to nurture it, because we then have to look after it, we have to give it the right soil, we have to give it the right water, we have to give it the right nourishment in order, an environment in order to grow. And the same thing happens for any living being that is human or animal. And of course this is a very, very precarious enterprise, and not every seed is going to necessarily come to fruition. It can't happen that way, because not all of it will have the whole karmic spectrum of being able to take life to its umpteenth degree. It will grow as much as it can to its own karmic potential. And there's no blame as such on any limitation that there is, therefore, for any seed to grow into full existence. There is only the potential for it to be the best that it can at that moment in time. And of course, the moment in time it comes into Earth carries its own karmic significance, because not every being, not every living being will come with the same potential as another. So one karmic being will come with great fortune of being lucky enough to carry their lives forward into some, sort of continuous existence, whereas others are not, and are not so lucky and are not so fortunate. How can we steer this in the direction? Because the next question has to be, what's the difference between one being that has that potential and another being that doesn't have that potential? No matter what the past has been, that's carried us forward into this existence with potential more or less great, in order for us to bring our best our best potential forward, so that we can enjoy life and that we can make it a fruitful life and fruitful existence, so that we can blossom and that we can carry forward that blossoming towards others as well and make their lives fruitful as well, and make their lives meaningful too. If we already know that past potential from previous existences have carried us forward into the seed, which then forms another lifetime, then would we not want to spend more time in this very moment, in this moment where the seed just comes to fruition, and every moment becomes that seed, and every day becomes the potential of a seed of what we can make of this day, because the whole logical conclusion to come from all of this is, if we have this day and if we have this moment, then how can that be brought forward into the best possible outcome for all involved? And if we have that idea within us already, and the knowledge that this is kind of what we really want to focus on, what best outcome to bring forth for all of us involved, for as many of people as we can involve and wish for everybody else to experience, then this moment becomes the only time where we have influence over our potential right now to create a better future. So the seed that's within all of us sprouts anew almost every day. This sounds a bit biblical, doesn't it? But I don't mean for it to sound very religious or anything, or a little bit far-fetched. I literally see it as each moment being the potential to put out there our wish for everything to be at its most optimum growth. A little bit like noticing the seed, seeing its full potential, and then nurturing it and bringing it forward into the next moment, and the moment after, and the moment after, and the moment after that. So carrying on with life, basically, and the preciousness that existence really brings, and understanding what it means to nurture and to bring the next stage of life into existence. And we have got an influence over that when we set our standards quite high, like I said about the kale seed that was grown from an organic plant already. So it had a seed with no or as little as possible pesticides in it, and as little as possible toxicity. And the organic soil wasn't just grown from organic matter, it was pesticide free, it was toxicity free as much as it could be, yeah, in this day and age where really all across the globe are struggling with toxicity, we're struggling with chemicals that are marring our existence, plant, animal or human. But literally our wish for every moment, for that to be the greatest potential possible, for it to be the greatest outcome possible, is the power that we have in order to bring forth what we want.